Okay, so this one is going to be for the next part of the chapter, namely 3.3.1. This one's going to be involving not only UE and UI, it's also going to start looking at EE and EI. And for EE, I'm going to try to be flagging more or less kind of the oddity of EE, while also again saying more or less it has a specific structure that we follow when we're using it, the same structure pretty much every time. We're just going to be substituting in some odd things every once in a while. So let's start with A. So A, for our first premise, we have universal x, fx, arrow gx. Our second premise is an existential. Exist x, not gx. And our goal is exist x, not fx. So as I noted, and I'm actually going to do the assumption numbers in a different color just to help us track some stuff. So as I noted in class, anytime you have a existential claim, you're going to want to always handle that first. And that is also going to be true here. So let's go ahead and start our subproof. Our subproof is going to be not GA. This is an assumption for the sake of EE. And why are we doing this? Well, we know that there is, like, let's pretend that this is the not G box. We know that there is something in here. There's like some type of X right there, but we don't know what particular thing has that quality. So we have to assume that some particular thing has that quality, in this case A, and ask what would follow if that particular thing did have that quality. But we don't actually know which particular thing does, just that something does. And then after we introduce our assumption for EE, then we can go ahead and use UE on line 1. That'll give us FA arrow GA. Then from there we can do a modus tollens to get not FA from 3, 4, MTT. And then with that, we can use EI. Notice that we're still working within a subproof though. We're still within the subproof of EE. The way that we close out a EE subproof is we reiterate what we wrote down last. And then we cite 3 lines. The lines with the existential claim, the line where we made the assumption, and the line where we finished and got to our conclusion. Then we write down EE. Let's take a look at these assumption numbers over here. So that came from a 1. That's a 1 and a 3. That's a 1 and a 3. And then this is the first time we see 2 come back, and we discharge the 3. There are going to be some exceptions to this. There's going to be a few where the 2 or the 1 will come back sooner, just because it gets used in a certain capacity. But for the most part, usually you won't see that existential, there exists an X line, come back until the very end. So that is A. Let's take a look at B. So we're going to start off with a universal claim first. Make sure to have all of our parentheses there. Then we have an existential claim of fx. So we're going to have to start a assumption for the sake of EE. After we start that, then we can go back and do UE on line 1. And that lets us use modus ponens. And then for those not looking at it, our goal here is to say existential x, hx. So from here, we're going to want to just go ahead and pull off that HA. We could also pull off the GA, but we don't need to, so I'm not going to this time. And elimination. Then we can use EI to make that into existential x hx. Then we get to close out the EE. From 2, 3, 7, EE. Then the last one for this section, before we hit problems that are a little bit more akin to your homework, is number C, or letter C. This one's a little bit longer. So here we start off with a universal claim. Then we have an existential claim. Our goal is EX negation FX. But since we have that existential claim in line 2, we're going to have to start an EE. So let's assume not HA for the sake of EE and see where it gets us. So first we need to do UE on line 1, so that'll give us FA or GA, arrow HA, UE, then we can get not FA or GA from 3, 4, Motos Tilendo Tollens. Then we can do De Morgan's. With De Morgan's, what we end up getting is not FA and not GA from 5, DEM. Our goal is negation FA, or rather existx negation FX, so we know that we'll start off with negation FA. So let's go ahead and just pop that negation FA off. 6, and elimination. Then use EI to turn that into existential X negation FX. One thing to note that the negation here stayed on the right side of the existential. You can't go from line 7 to not EX FX. That's very, very wrong. So don't do that. Then we can discharge the EE. 2, 3, 8, EE. Then for our assumption numbers, that came from 1, 1 and 3, 1 and 3, 1 and 3, 1 and 3, 1, 2 and 3, and then we get to discharge the 3. So this is going to be somewhat similar to some of the homework problems that you have in 3.3.2, but I'll be doing another video that starts running through those problems since those are slightly more complex. I think that most of those problems are about, looks like 10 to 11 lines long. Yeah, everything is 10 to 11 lines long for the optional problems. They're just more complex insofar as you sometimes have to introduce some and statements. Sometimes you have to do a double negation. And then there's a little bit more to do for modus ponens and modus tollens. But this is the basic format.